Hello and welcome to my July book haul. You may be thinking to yourself, Sophia, weren't you on a book buying ban in July? Yes I was, and I managed to not buy any books at all for nearly 4 weeks, which for me is really good. I did have some books that I had pre-ordered a while ago that came filtering throughout the month of July, and then also this last weekend was meant to be YALC, Young Adult LitCon, which is a young adult literature convention here in London that happens yearly at the same time as Comic-Con, but unfortunately this year it got cancelled because of COVID. And I went for the first time last year, absolutely loved it, bought an absolute truckload of books, and I had every intention of doing the same again this year because they have really good deals on books at YALC, but of course because it was cancelled I wasn't able to do that, so I did still allow myself to buy a few books this weekend when I would have been at YALC anyway, and I think that that's fair enough. So I do have a total of 7 pre-orders to show you and 6 purchases to show you, which does amount to 13 books, which seems like a lot in a month that I wasn't supposed to be buying any books, but again I did actually manage 4 weeks without buying any, so I think that's reasonable for me. I'm going to stop justifying myself and jump into the actual haul. I'm going to start off with the pre-orders, and this is not in any particular order. So the first one is The Damned by Renee Ahdieh, which has lovely lilac sprayed edges. This is the sequel to The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, which I read last year. It came in a Fairy Loot box last year, and they did this edition of the sequel which matches the edition that they did. So like I said, it has lilac sprayed edges and is also signed by Renee. I can't tell you what this one is about, but the first book is set in New Orleans and it's vampire inspired. Vampires are not as present in the story as I was expecting. It feels, if you've ever watched the originals, which is the spin-off of the Vampire Diaries, which is also set in New Orleans, it's very reminiscent of that in terms of tone. It's dark and mysterious, and we know that vampires are there and involved somehow, and we probably know who the vampires are, but our main character doesn't know about any of that, and we follow her dealing with these mysterious goings on and coming to discover the dark underbelly of New Orleans, as it were. And this is the sequel. I believe that this is a duology, so this is also the concluding novel, and I'm very excited to read it because I think that vampires are going to take a much more prevalent role in the follow-up. The next pre-order I'm going to talk about is Out Now, Queer We Go Again, edited by Sandra Mitchell, a collection of stories featuring queer teens today from the editor of All Out. And the authors, this is an anthology if you hadn't guessed, and it features stories from Fox Benwell, Tanya Botuju, Kate Hart, Kosoko Jackson, Will Kostakis, C.B. Lee, Catherine Locke, Sandra Mitchell, Hilary Monaghan, Candice Montgomery, Mark Oshiro, Caleb Rowick, Meredith Russo, Elliot Sharifa, Tara Sim, Jessica Verdi and Julian Winters. And I can't remember where I heard about this, but basically I saw anthology, which is something I want to read more of queer short stories, and I was sold. So here it is, and I'm really looking forward to reading each and every one of these stories. Then we have Loveless by Alice Oseman, which I have already read. This is Alice's newest novel, and it follows Georgia, who is going away to university with her 2 best friends, and she's desperate to find love, but she's very confused about what that means for her and how it works, and through her journeys, she discovers her arrow ace sexuality, which is not a spoiler because it's written on the back and it's kind of the point of the story. And I'm not going to talk about this one any more than that because I actually wrapped this one up in a video that went up on Sunday. So I will link that up there for you if you haven't seen it yet. Next, I'm going to talk about the 2 books that came in my June Fairy Loot box, which actually arrived in July because of the delays because of COVID. So the first one is an advanced copy of The Gilded Ones by Namina Fauna, which is, first of all, absolutely beautiful. Look how stunning it is. And I don't think this is out until April of 2021, so I'm really sorry about that you can't actually get this yet. And this follows a character named Dika who has to take part in something called a blood ceremony to determine whether or not she's human and can become part of her village, or if she's actually a demon. So that sounds really interesting. And then the other one that was also in that same box is Forest of Souls by Laurie M. Lee, which has spiders involved, which I don't love because I'm terrified of spiders. But it follows Saoirse, whose best friend dies, but she then brings them back from the dead and discovers that she has this really rare ability, power, magic that no one else has, and that causes some problems for her and we have to deal with those. And there's something about the Spider King, but I'm not looking too deep into it because I don't like spiders. Then we have 2 more books that I have already read and that were also pre-orders from Fairy Loot. So back in November, December kind of time, I received this beautiful, beautiful edition of The Queen of Nothing from Fairy Loot, and they then did matching versions of The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King, which have finally arrived. So here they are beautiful. This is The Cruel Prince, so we have the acorn. This is what the spine looks like. The back is the same as the front, and then we have these beautiful stencil sprayed edges which go all the way around, and there is also a ribbon bookmark. So that's The Cruel Prince, and then The Wicked King has the dagger and the coral here, and that's what the spine looks like. Same on the back, and this is what the sprayed edges look like. And I'm not going to talk about what these are about. You probably don't know anyway. They're Fae-inspired fantasy. I have already read them all. Was it a favourite series ever? No, but I do consider myself a book collector, and how could I not have a matching set? I mean, I can't stop looking at them in the viewfinder because they're just so special, and they just look so great on my shelf, and it's an extravagance, I know, but they're beautiful and I couldn't say no. So those are all of the pre-orders. We are now moving on to the books that I bought myself this weekend. So the first one is another anthology, and that is Don't Call Me Crazy, which is edited by Kelly Jensen but includes stories from quite a long list of authors. So I'll just hold that there and you can pause and read that list if you would like to. I think that Victoria Schwab is the only one that I've read from before, so that's really interesting. This is, as you may have gathered, non-fiction, but it's actually, I believe, designed for middle grade readers, which I thought would make it a little bit more accessible. As you know, I'm not a big non-fiction reader, and this is a collection of essays and it isn't available in audiobook, but Kayla from the channel Books and Lala recently recommended this one, and mental health is something that I am really very interested in, so I thought that this would be a really good one to pick up. And if I like it, then Kelly Jensen has actually compiled more essay collections like this one on different themes, so I can look at reading those too if I like this. And it's not too long, so even though there's 33 essays in here, it's actually only 208 pages long. It's a bit longer than that with all the, you know, author bios and stuff, but the actual essays only run to page 208. So hopefully this should be a little bit more achievable for me in terms of non-fiction. Then another book that Kayla from the channel Books and Lala has talked about recently on her channel, we have The Wicker King by Kay Enkram, which is also LGBTQIA+, and this tells the story of two very different friends. So we have August, who is a misfit, and Jack, who is a golden boy. And then Jack begins to experience hallucinations, and we quite literally follow his descent into darkness. I'm just watching the screen to see if you can see. So the pages start off white and they progress darker and darker into the black, and my understanding is that that is supposed to mimic what is going on in Jack's mind throughout the story. It's also multimedia and it sounds fantastic. Kayla had nothing but good things to say about this one, and it's dual perspective, and I really like multimedia stories. I've only read, well, the only ones that spring to mind that I've read that are multimedia are The Illuminae Files by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I'm pretty sure I've read other things that are multimedia, but I can't think of them right now. But this just really attracted me, and again, mental health is something I find really interesting to read about. Then you might remember that, was it a month or two ago, I read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and it was the first Jane Austen book that I had ever read, and I decided when I read that one that I wanted to read more of her works, and I decided that the next one of hers I wanted to read was Emma, because this is her comedy novel, and it's quite a lot chunkier than anticipated, but these vintage classics are quite diddy. These are the Penguin vintage classic editions, and they are a little bit shorter than the average book, so they're a bit thicker in general. Anyway, I don't know much about what this is about, but I kind of want to keep it that way, and once I've read this I will be able to watch the new adaptation of this story. Then I finally picked up two books that have been on my wish list for absolutely ages, and I read the first book last year twice and just completely loved it and fell in love with it and the writing and the characters, and I don't know why I have waited so long to pick up these two sequels or companions. So I got A Closed and Common Orbit and Record of a Space-Born Few by Becky Chambers. So these are books 2 and 3 in the Wayfarers series. They don't follow the same characters as the first book, but they are sort of companions. They're set in the same world. We follow some of the same characters, but not all, i.e. we know these characters, they just weren't main characters in the first one. I'm talking specifically about the second book. I don't really know much at all about the third book, and I can't really tell you what these are about. Not because they're sequels, because like I say, you don't necessarily need to read these in order, although I think the suggestion is that you do, but I kind of just want to go in not knowing anything because of how much I loved the first one. I just trust that Becky Chambers will have dealt with this really well. The first story follows the crew on the spaceship Wayfarer as they take on a dangerous and important job, and It's quite episodic. We follow each of the characters. There's multiple perspectives. We find it's sort of a story of found family and analysing these characters and their relationships with each other, and there's a little bit of politics, there's a little bit of action, but that's not really the point of the story. It's very character driven, and I just loved that about it, and so I kind of just want to go into these not knowing much more than that I trust this author to do just as well with these books as she did with the first one. So I'm really glad that I finally picked these up, and I'm really looking forward to reading them. And then finally we have Deep Light by Frances Hardinge, and this is the Waterstones exclusive paperback edition, which is really beautiful. I have had this on my TBR for quite a while, but it's only just come out in paperback, and I didn't really want to buy a hardback of this particular book. It came out last year, as you may have guessed from that, and I think what I will do, there's only one paragraph on the back, and I think I'll just read that to you. So, on the island of Ladies' Crave live Hark and his best friend Jelt. They are scavengers, living off their wits, diving for relics of the gods, desperate for anything they can sell. But now there is something restless stirring beneath the waves, calling to someone brave enough to retrieve it. Something valuable, something dangerous. And I don't know why, but that just kind of called to me. I don't read a lot of sea-based fantasy, but when I do, I tend to enjoy it. So I decided, since this was now out in paperback and it was also available in the buy one get one half price sale, that I would pick it up. And if you're wondering what the book that I got for half price was, I got a second copy of Loveless, which I gave to my sister, and you'll be able to see that in a vlog which will be coming your way very soon. But that is it. Those are all of the books that I received and bought in the month of July. And I'm going to try to keep my book buying under control in August as well. I'm not going to be on a formal book buying ban, but I would like to try and ensure that I am prioritising getting through my physical TBR rather than increasing it, as I have seemed to have been doing throughout the year. So that is the plan, and that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks, bye.